Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, it's transfer rumour mill season, and since the last time we recorded the Alex Moreno one, three massive links have just popped up out of nowhere and caught us off guard. It's not like the Villa Filler to be caught off guard. So here we are. We've got a triple threat for you guys today. Harry Maguire, Lee Kang-In, and Alberto Moleiro. But first of all, mate, how are you doing?
Very good, mate. Very good. Woke up this morning, I'm gonna say about 7:30, 8 maybe, to a text from you at, I'm gonna say 1 a.m. You're more of a night owl than me, I think. You like to burn the old midnight
Yeah.
oil. And so got a text. I was like, wow, what's happened for Dan to be texting me at like 1 a.m.? Open my phone and it's back. Those incognito shots of players sat in restaurants and pubs, supposedly in and around the Belfry or the Villa training ground are back. But I didn't expect to see Harry Maguire's face. Apparently he's been in the Fig and Olive. And I always like these ones because whilst there may be some truth to this rumor, I always find it hilarious that a player and maybe his agent would go and sit to keep this deal on the hush. They'd go and sit in a pub like 2 miles from Bodymoor Heath. I do think it. I'm always like, I feel like they definitely wouldn't do that, but supposedly they have. And yeah, I worked to that screenshot of that tweet this morning saying the odds have been slashed. He's now at 1-5 to come to the Villa, and it could only mean one thing, mate, and that's an AM recording of the Transfer Room Mill, its latest instalment, and it's going to be a busy one.
It is, mate. It is. It's a weird one, and it kind of came out of nowhere last night, didn't it? You know that there was the everyone suddenly just started talking about Maguire, and I'm like, okay, where's this come from? And then it quite clearly come from this photo of him in the pig and olive or whatever in Tamworth, and it's like, as you say, why would you be caught like that? And it might not be Harry Maguire. There's a lad who I went to school with who looks exactly like Harry Maguire, so it could be him. But I mean, we don't know. But nevertheless, it's definitely enough for us to talk about because it's a name that I feel like for the past month or so, I've sort of looked at Harry Maguire and sort of been watching Manchester United and seeing him like on and off the bench and all this kind of stuff, and thought that a club like Villa, not necessarily Villa, but maybe even a Newcastle or someone like that, it's really worth taking a punt because he's so out of favour at Manchester United. Uh, he's barely started since Eric Ten Hag's come in. He's often been the scapegoat. That £80 million transfer just hasn't worked out whatsoever. But he's not as bad as everybody makes him out to be. And I think first things first, I think everyone is more than entitled to have their opinion on players, and that is completely fair. And that's literally, we're in the game of opinions. We do this podcast because we have opinions. We want to know your opinions. But I think people need to hold off on slating Harry Maguire, but dying on a sword that Mings is a fantastic centre half because they're almost the same player in different circumstances, right? Expensive fee, comes to a club, big expectations, maybe perhaps hasn't quite lived up to that, always delivers on the international level. Yet some Villa fans will say Harry Maguire is the worst defender they've ever seen, but he's never put a foot wrong for England. And that's our argument with Mings all the time. Everybody,
Yeah,
not necessarily Villa fans, but people will slate Mings and go, he's awful, he's this, he's that. And the first thing Villa fans say is, well, he's never let England down. And the exact same
yeah,
thing
yeah,
can be said about Harry Maguire. Steps up in a high pressure moment in the Euros final and absolutely thundercunts a penalty in the top corner. That's a centre back. Like
yeah, yeah,
this
yeah.
guy, like that's mental. That's like he's a professional footballer, obviously, but like for a centre half to do that in that kind of moment and that kind of pressure, absolutely mental. And I feel like if had Harry Maguire have stayed at Leicester, all this heat that's put on him from being at the biggest club in the world, playing for Manchester United, the £80 million transfer fee. Heck, even if he joined for 40, mate, nobody's giving him half as much stick as he's been getting, which is just the business, really. It's he can't help that. He can't help that's the fee that Leicester demanded and Manchester United paid for him. He lives and dies by what he does on the pitch, which largely isn't as bad as most people say, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree, mate. I've got I really like Harry Maguire mainly because I love underdogs, and
Yeah,
he is a player he's a good defender. Let's have it right. Harry Maguire is a good defender. He's not. He was cursed right from the word go because he followed Verge's move to Liverpool for a similar fee, and so was always going to be compared to a man that like pretty much automatically hit Ballon d'Or level form for Liverpool. And from then on, the bed was really made for him. And I really have an axe to grind with Man United for the way that they treated Harry Maguire, and particularly Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who continued to put him into the firing line when it's obvious that he needed to step away and he needed some time out. I mean, it all escalated to that point where, I mean, like there was a bomb scare at his house and everybody had to be evacuated and everything like that. How are you supposed to perform like mentally if you're in that environment? It's There's so much credit to him for the fact that he still continued to go out there, that he still continued to put on the captain's armband and continue to go and play well for England. And you know, the World Cup that we just had just highlights that there's still a very good player there. And I have a real feeling that be it Villa or anywhere else, wherever his next move takes him, he'll play well. I think he'll do well to get out of the spotlight a little bit. And I think it's an interesting one that Villa have been one of the names touted because, you know, Diego Carlos is supposed to, like, I've seen February sort of penciled in as the month in which we're supposed to get him back out on the grass in some form. So his return is not a million miles away. And obviously we've got Ty, we've got Ezri, we've got Bednarek on loan, we've got Cal Chambers. So like, you know, we're when Carlos comes back, we're back to being quite well stocked in that position. And I think by and large, Mings has had a really good season so far. I think he's been one of our more consistent performers. But you're right in saying that the two are sort of one of the same. And, you know, in sort of Maguire's defence, when you spend that much money on a player, how many of those deals do pay off when they get above 80 million? You know, he's the 16th most expensive transfer of all time. And, you know, above him, you've got the likes of, I mean, that Coutinho deal, João Felix, Jack Grealish, Romelu Lukaku, Ousmane Dembele, Paul Pogba, Eden Hazard, you know, all of
more of them
these
haven't
guys.
worked.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So, like, I mean, above him, like, if I'm looking at the top 15, Ronaldo to Real Madrid, I think that went okay. I mean, you're still
Maybe.
holding out on an Anthony. I mean, you can even, I mean, Bale to Real Madrid is in that sort of maybe category. I mean, at the very top end, Neymar to PSG is still the most expensive of all time. That hasn't delivered the fruits that they wanted it to. The only ones that you can concretely say worked out are Mbappe to PSG and Ronaldo. I'm going to say that's about it. I mean, he's just behind Higuain to Juve from Napoli, which didn't work out either. He's above like Jadon Sancho, Kai Havertz,
I
Wesley
think we can say
Fofana.
Bale's a success.
Yes, yeah, I think we
I think
can. I
we
think
can.
we can. And so not many of them do. And I think that there's so many external circumstances with Harry Maguire's situation at Man United that mean that I think he could benefit from a move out.
Absolutely. And it's like, you know, he was provoked in Greece and then arrested and this whole thing, and it was all before the Euro. Like, you know, it's just a whole mess. Like, this guy's life has truly been turned upside down, and not in the kind that Will Smith's had in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It's gone complete. Like, he who would have thought? Obviously, hindsight's 2020, but he's sat there. Manchester United have bid £80 million for him. He wants to move. You know, he's from the north himself. He's from Sheffield, so he's very much aware of how big Manchester United is. Everybody is. It's very easy for us to sit here and go, Manchester United are a mess. Nobody should go there. Absolutely ridiculous. All this kind of stuff. But when they're offering that kind of money, and like footballers to a certain degree are all like narcissists and all think that they can be the one that changes everything. And there's nothing wrong with that. To be as successful as they are, they have to have that degree of narcissism to them. So Harry Maguire's going to sit there and go, I'm going to be the next Steve Bruce. I'm going to be the next Nemanja Vidic. I'm the next Rio Ferdinand. Like, I'm going to be the one to buck the trend. And it just hasn't gone that way for him. And again, that's football. That's how it goes. But I do think he would favour from stepping out of the limelight. I do think I know I compared him to Mings. I do think he probably is better than Mings. I think it's marginal, but I look at, as you say, we are stacked in that area. And what I always say, mate, you don't buy players worse than you have. You don't, like, that's not how you build a squad. You buy players who are better than what you have.
Yeah.
And I would say first of all, we're forgetting Courtney Horse is still on our books. Obviously, he's at Watford. We've got Courtney,
Yeah.
we've got Cow, we've got Bednarek. He's instantly better than those three. I would say he edges Mings, and Carlos, that's up for debate. Harry Maguire probably comes down and he's Villa's best centre half, one of the most high profile defenders we've signed since Paul McGrath. Maybe even including Diego in that as well, considering he's Brazilian and he's won a couple of trophies and all that kind of stuff. It makes sense, but I think the fee is going to be the big question. Now, Eric Ten Hag said in his press conference the other day, Manchester United have signed so many average players, and that average players are not welcome at Manchester United. And I can't help but feel that is aimed straight at his captain. Like, that feels like it's the most indirect way of saying, Harry Maguire, I don't fancy him, mate. I'm going to play a little 4'7" dwarf from Argentina who just won the World Cup instead. Which is fair enough. That's his prerogative. But I think the way that Villa are going to play at times with a high line, we've seen Harry Maguire do that, and he has been caught out as well. But what's important is that it's not like you don't just sort of cater to one player's needs. You have to find. It's about a partnership, the two centre halves, right? So if you're going to play a Harry Maguire, then there has to be somebody next to him who is able to play on the recovery. And I think from what we've seen in Diego Carlos in the short term, he absolutely fits that bill. And he's an absolute machine as well. I think Maguire is probably better than a lot of people give credit for in possession of the ball. I think he probably was given that burden of playing out from the back and starting them attacks more than he should have at Manchester United, which is obviously, again, going to put him in that spotlight. And it's only recently Luke Shaw's sort of turned his form around as well, mate, and seriously started to show what he's actually capable of, ironically playing at centre-half as well. So I feel like he's no matter what has happened with Harry Maguire, there's always something that you can kind of point to and go, well, I think he's kind of been dealt a bit of a shitty card here.
Yeah.
And, if we're looking to bring Moreno in, obviously we've got Dean, all this kind of stuff. He's gonna feel more comfortable having somebody who's better on the recovery paired next to him as well in Diego when that happens. I'm not against it. I can't say I'm against it. Villa paid £25 million for Harry Maguire. You're not going to hear a peep from me, mate. I think that's a good deal, and I can see the comments already. I can see that.
No, I back it, mate. I back it. I really do. I think, especially if, like, given the nature of the deal, and if you could work a loan in, maybe like a 6-month loan with an option, or like that's sensible for me. It really is. I think he's a good player. I really do. And as you said, there's so much. I mean, we haven't even touched on the fact that he's walking out on the armband with 10 players behind him is Cristiano Ronaldo. Like, the pressure that puts on you. Like, this man like lives, breathes armbands, like those responsibilities. And Harry Maguire's like, in that dressing room, not performing, knowing that Cristiano Ronaldo is like prowling, waiting to take that. Like, there's so much going on with him. But yeah, I'd welcome him with open arms, mate. I think he comfortably comes in and is, in the best sort of, at least, only Carlos you can really sort of say that has got a chance of being a more established player than him. So yeah, bring it on, mate. And so yeah, I'll take that one.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. I think it's some. If it happens, I'm buzzing, mate. I am. The fee is the only thing. But next, mate, a few things coming out of Spain. Kang-In Lee
Surprise.
from Mallorca. It's an interesting one. It's an interesting one, and I think everybody watched him yesterday. It's been Copa del Rey week, hasn't it, in
Yeah.
Spain? And he put in a really nice free kick. He absolutely smashed it about 50 yards. Seems to have a bit of a wand of a left foot. So far this season in La Liga, 2 goals, 4 assists in 16 appearances. South Korean, people may have seen him at the World Cup. Can kind of play anywhere along that forward line, which is interesting, predominantly on the left. And I think it always happens with these kind of players. You see someone from a country like South Korea, and maybe the cynics or the sort of business minded people go, oh well, we're trying to raise our profile in South Korea, which is absolutely true. That is a correct statement, but we're no longer signing shit players just to do that. We're not signing Ali Samata here. We're not signing. I hate to paint Marv with that brush as well, but Marv, if we're talking about the quality of player immediately coming in,
Yeah.
Marv don't really fit the description as this one does, mate. And it would be like disingenuous to ignore that as well, because I was sat right next to the home fans at Tottenham Hotspur away, mate, and that pretty much the whole section was full of South Koreans, which is amazing. That's mad. They've travelled all that way. They all come to London to see their superstar. I mean, it's like everybody who goes to watch Messi at Barca and PSG. You know what I mean? You see people from all corners of the world because he's the GOAT. But Son is South Korea's GOAT. And you see literally pretty much everybody in that stand was South Korean. It's amazing. So yeah, maybe you up some shirt sales and you get a few more tourists coming to Villa Park from different continents, which is, again, it's a good thing. We're looking to expand the profile of the club, but this isn't just for that reason. Like, there is quite a high ceiling with Kang, and again, you kind of have to back him, and in the versatility of positions that he can play in the forward line, he's going to be perfect to play in that Buendia and JJ role, and even McGinn at the moment that we're currently operating in on that left-hand side. Transfermarkt have him valued at, I believe, around 12 million euros. So, like, again, it just seems like a no-brainer, mate. If Uno wants him, he's a football encyclopedia when it comes to Spain. Jack Grealish, Google it. I trust him wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I love Kang-In Lee. I love Kang-In Lee. He's so much fun. He's so much fun, and he has been since he was at Valencia. And he's a flat out superstar back home in South Korea. I was reading stuff about him, and he appeared on like a sort of I can't remember what the name of the show is. It's like Fly Shoot Dory or something like that, and it's about I'm guessing it's sort of a like South Korean sports show, and he's like was on this show at like 6 years old. It's like hailed as the next superstar footballer to be coming out of South Korea, and he impressed in his home country. He like was offered trials in Spain with Villarreal and with Valencia. He spent a lot of time with Valencia and did quite well there. He won a Copa del Rey there. But since 2021, he's been playing for, as you say, Mallorca, mate. And he's played well. He's played well, and he's impressed. He sort of arrived with this sort of wonder kid tag, and it's a step down in terms of the stature of the club, but he still did well at Valencia. It wasn't like he left with the tail between his legs. As I said, he won the Copa del Rey. He was their youngest non-Spanish goal scorer for a while, until Yunus Musa recently took that from him. He spent 6 years in their academy, 3 with their first team. Valencia had all of these financial problems, right? They're a club that have been blighted by financial difficulty, which meant that they actually terminated his contract and he moved to Mallorca. And despite all this, he's gone there and he's been one of their most prominent players. Mariki, who's their manager, there's only 3 outfield players that have played more minutes this season for Mallorca. He's played a part in like if you look at a proportion of Mallorca's goals, because they don't score too many, he's had a hand in like 35% of the goals they've scored this season. He's really good when he's facing up to defenders. He's the 4th best player in the league in terms of number of dribbles completed. That's at 23 at the moment. But those high impact actions that I'm talking about, chance creation and stuff like that, there are only 10 players in La Liga with more chances created this season than Kang-In Lee. And he's doing this for Mallorca, which, as I said, is a side that, they don't operate in the upper echelons of the table, shall we say, at the moment. They're kicking around, and they're about mid-table. I think it's about 10th that they sit in at the moment. And he's a really fun player. We've sort of seen these 2 like Asian like wonder kids arrive in La Liga, in Taka Kubo and in Lee Kang-In, and they've both been on very sort of different trajectories, it's fair to say, but Lee Kang-In is one where we've seen in Mana Iwabuchi, who played for Villa Women before her move to Arsenal, we set up a Japanese language Villa Twitter account just because of her and the interest that that generated in Japan. Mallorca have just done the same with Kang-In Lee. They've just set up a Korean speaking Twitter account. I'm talking like literally in the last couple of months. So I feel very sorry for anybody on their media team if he does end up leaving in January. But that's the power that these guys have. I mean, the fact that we have a Japanese speaking or had a Japanese speaking Twitter account, not just for the men's team, but for the women's as well, because of Mana Iwabuchi, shows that the power that these guys have. And like, I hate that, I don't like the narrative that these players are bought in for commercial reasons.
Yeah,
That like
it
we're doing it
disrespects them. Like, these are
100%,
good players.
100%. Like that's not our scouting team don't care about that. Our scouting it is a mere bonus. If that, I can't imagine the social team or the PR team at Villa are having too much say in the transfer dealings that go on with the scouting department. But it is really cool that you can foster those communities. And we all love what we see from like the Ghana Lions and stuff like that, and having these different nations inspired by players that go on and play in the Premier League is really cool. But it is merely an added bonus. Lee Kang-In is a fantastic footballer who I think is beginning to reach his ceiling at Mallorca. I think maybe I'd be a little bit surprised if he chooses to leave for the Premier League, as I would with Moleiro, who we'll come on to in a bit. But it's really interesting, and I love him as a player.
Yeah, and for anybody who isn't aware, Dan is like the biggest La Liga fan I know. So if Dan's got something good to say about someone in La Liga, you guys should trust it. Which excites me even more about this, mate. And I mean, you mentioned Kubo. He was on loan at Mallorca as well.
Yep.
So he spent a bit of time there last season. Didn't have the best of time. I'd love Kubo, mate. I would really love that to happen. I think he's still just waiting to explode, isn't he?
Well, the two players that both had really good World Cups as well. Lee Kang-In picked up an assist in South Korea's defeat to Ghana with a really nice cross. And obviously, with what Japan did, Kubo was that central to that. So, the fact that they're doing it at the World Cup stage is encouraging too.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? They're in a top five league, as you say, World Cup. You can't complain at that. You can't turn your nose up at that. And I think as well, like we've seen wherever Unai Emery has gone, PSG aside, he's operated on a budget, right? And he's been able to I don't want to say wheel and deal because that's not really the case, but he's managed to unearth gems and not have to pay over the odds. And I think, we find ourselves in a difficult situation because we're in the Premier League. People know we have money. People know we have £100 million incoming from Manchester City for Jack Grealish. So more likely than not, Villa are going to end up overpaying slightly for anybody. That's just how it is. So if you can go and say transfer market having valued at €12 million, you can go and get this guy for that much. It's good value more than anything. So I think these are the kind of signings that we're going to make. Obviously, we got giddy with João Felix. We got giddy with that. And even like Harry Maguire to a certain extent, because I'm sure he's going to have offers from plenty of other teams in the Premier League. Anyone who would turn their nose up at Harry Maguire, in my opinion, is just completely ridiculous to do that. It's the kind of signing, as I said, I could really see Newcastle making to shore up their European aspirations. I think that would be a fantastic signing for them. Obviously, I hope they don't do it because I wouldn't mind him. But we're not going to be spending 50 million on this player, 70 million on that player, 100 million on another. These are the kind of deals that are going to get us up there. And as I think I mentioned it on the last podcast, like the squad's going to be unrecognisable in 2 windows. So it's about an overhaul. It's about getting players out firstly as well, getting the right players in, and it's interesting, mate. It's interesting, especially when another player that we've obviously been linked to, Alberto Moleiro, mate, born in 2003. We're at that stage, mate. 2003. I can't believe it. We're after 19-year-olds. He's playing in the second division of La Liga. Again, I can't claim to know too much. He's playing at Las Palmas. He's bagged himself 5 assists in 20 league games so far this season. But again, another good barometer of what we can go by. Some of Europe's biggest clubs are after this guy, namely Barcelona. Now, I don't think there's a Spanish player under the age of 20 that Barcelona ever aren't interested in, because that's just how they operate. But again, it's a good indication of where we could be, because, you know, as we mentioned with God, the names escape me now, but the lad from Villarreal, Jackson, was it Jackson?
Yeah.
Barcelona, they're really interested in him as well. So this is an interesting one to see how this one sort of pans out. There isn't too much numbers wise available online, because the Segunda division doesn't have the most coverage. So I'd be interested to see how this one goes, mate. I don't know if does Transfermarkt even have anything on it. Like,
There's not a lot.
there's no, at 3 million euros he's valued at. So again, but like, I don't mind this, because this is interesting. This is where, like, and I mentioned it before, like, if you want to do the Brighton model of recruitment, you go after these players, you loan them out for 2 or 3 years, you bring them back when they're ready, and bam, you have a World Cup winner, Alexis McAllister, in your squad, and you have Moises Caicedo, who's linked with moves to Chelsea and other top clubs. This is how not big clubs, this is how smart clubs operate their scouting. They sign players that you and I can't even tell you that all that much about, and make them into superstars.
Yeah, we were only saying it like on the last podcast, how it's a little bit like we seem to have adjusted our transfer policy. And I think we are going to see a lot more clubs going to source, because take Enzo Fernandez. Take Enzo Fernandez, right? He's recently been touted with this move to like Chelsea from Benfica at, like, around 100 million euros or whatever. Benfica bought him from River Plate for about 5 million 6 months ago. And now, I mean, what's that? I mean, I don't know maths, but it's like an 8,000% increase on their transfer profit. Man City did it with Julian Alvarez. We were looking at that too. And I think with Moleiro, there's not too much on him. Las Palmas out on the Canary Islands have been a really good place for spotting good talent. It's one of the biggest misconceptions in football that Pedri is a graduate of La Masia. He's not. He came through at Las Palmas, and that's where Barcelona bought him from. Apparently, Barca and Real Madrid are both looking at Moleiro. He's had a good season. He's got a release clause of about 26.4 million. Which is a lot for a player coming out of the Segunda. But then again, like, Las Palmas are in everything but their official place in the league, a La Liga club, in my opinion. I think they'll get out of the Segunda sooner rather than later. But I think he's an interesting talent, sort of playing through the middle. Now, admittedly, I don't know too much about him, because he's really emerged whilst they have been playing in the second division. And I watch a lot of Spanish football, but not that much. But, there's a lot of good players that have come out of Las Palmas recently. And I think with these, whilst we might not be wowed by the numbers, you don't really get 20-year-olds that are playing with 29-year-olds output, unless their name is like João Felix, and we're not in that bracket. So I think when you're looking at these players, you sort of have to stray away from the goals and assists a little bit, because we're not shopping in that elite bracket, but there's still talent there. And I think Unai's going to have a good grip on the Spanish leagues, and I think we need to trust his recruitment in that front. And I think signing some players that are a bit younger, that have still got lots of room to improve, would be encouraging, and I would like to see that a little bit more. So yeah, it's one that I can't really see happening, to be honest with you, because I don't think he takes the jump out of Spain at this age. I think he'll go and want to play in his home country, in his home division. It would be a young age to go and ditch Spanish football altogether and move abroad. But let's see.
Absolutely. And that's where, the Brighton model comes into play, mate. You sign him, give him back for 2 years. Let him develop, let him stay there, let him grow as a man as well, because he's a young boy. As you say, we've seen so many times. I feel like Spanish players probably have the most difficulty making that transition to England, because, like, the lifestyle is just so different. Yeah. Like, despite being an hour away on a plane, you couldn't find two totally opposite cultures in terms of just socially, work ethic as well. These guys have 3 naps a day. I wish I could. I can't nap. I'm not a napper, but it's just what the Spanish do. Do you know what I mean? They have a completely different way of living life, and you take them out of the sort of scorching sun and place them in Sutton Coldfield during the cold winter months, mate. And to say it would be a culture shock is a complete and utter understatement, especially for a young lad. I think the only thing that would probably keep him, sort of smiling cheek to cheek is the bank balance and the potential thought of playing in the Premier League. But sometimes that's not enough. So,
Yep.
I mean, yeah, if this is one that gets done, amazing. If it's a case of we loan him back to Las Palmas, or there's other clubs that are interested and want to take him in on loan and develop him, absolutely, let's get this done. I'm all about this. Like, let's moneyball a little bit here. It's
Yep.
interesting because,
Totally.
like as you said, we spoke about the strategy, and it kind of seems like we're just getting in winners at this point, right? We're getting in players who Unai knows and can trust, and I'm all for that. But you look at Arsenal; it's a young squad. It's young, it's impressionable. The first thing Arteta did was remove all of the older deadwood that wouldn't listen to him and respond to him. And at the time, people called it naive, and people said he doesn't have respect and authority and all this kind of stuff. But in fact, he does, because that's exactly what he did. He stamped his authority on that squad, and has now garnered a group of young and impressionable players who will bend to his will and to his system, and that's ultimately the job of the manager. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I think the players that we're targeting anyway seem like they're going to be the type that we won't have too many trouble. We don't have many Aubameyang or Lacazette types in this squad. We don't have, or even like Mesut Ozils or players like that who have been sort of notoriously known for causing a bit of trouble. So it'll be interesting to see, as I say, that transformation over the next couple of transfer windows. I'm excited, and if it's more players that are linked like this, then strap in, guys, because we're going to go on an adventure. We're going to be researching these guys. We're going to be delivering podcasts to you guys, and it's just an exciting time to be a Villa fan.
Yep.
There's not long left on the Zoom. We play Stevenage tonight. There'll probably be something on that. Just keep your eye out. There'll be loads more shorts from this as well. Yeah, if you subscribed recently, thank you again. We're giving away 2 shirts at the end of the month. We're nearly at 10k. It's mad. Like, looking at the numbers now, we are 8,700 odd, which is mad. We're gaining like 100 odd subs a day. Thank you so much to everybody who's watching, who's listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and up the Villa.